Hello again, and it's time for another project. Today we're going to route out this screen mask from the scary movies. The idea is to route out all the black section, doing this outer section slightly deeper, and then we'll use a dremel with some sanding drums on, a bit of engraving bits, and we'll give it a nice bit of shape to what we need. And then we'll cut it all out on a scroll saw, and we'll cut out the centerpiece, and we're going to make it the front of a bird nesting box. Something a bit different, I know. I've already enlarged the nose section. I did a bit of research, and for the blue tits, the sparrows I'm trying to get, they recommend from 25mm up to 32. Now here in the UK, the milk bottle top is literally 1.5 inches, roughly about 38mm. So that's plenty big enough for a bird to go in. So we're not far off the same size as that. We'll round it off and shape it a little bit better. So for my bird boxes, I tend to use the lid of a milk bottle, and that's perfect size for what we need. So we will be removing the centre of the mask, routing out all the darkened areas, and then we'll shape it all off nicely. We'll put a bit of acrylic paint on, which is also safe for birds, no problem before anybody comes on. And then we'll make some kind of box to go at the back, literally for the nesting box. And obviously the entrance will be the nose, or it might end up being a triangle section yet at the back. But we'll see near the time, once we've routed it all and cut it all out on the scroll saw. Now normally I use CNC bits and end milling bits, but this is going to be a simple project really. It's more the shaping of the skull at the end than the actual routing out. So I'm going to go straight in with these double flute straight flush trim bits. It's a mouthful, and I will put a link in the description. They come in nice sizes, going up to nice big chunky things like that. They're a little bit aggressive, and I certainly wouldn't use them on delicate pieces, but for something like this, which is going to go straight in, they'd be ideal. I will start off with the smallest one, which is a 1/8 bit, I believe. They come with a 1/4 inch shank on, so that will go straight into your router. On my previous videos, we have to use the adapter collet for the 3.175mm bits, but that's 1/4 inch, so no adapter needed. So we'll pop that into the router. We'll set it to literally 3mm for these sections, and I'm going to go 4 to 5mm for the bottom. It's nice chunky wood, we've got plenty to play with. And then once it's all cut out nicely, we'll work out how we're going to do the box at the back. Now as always for me, we've printed our image off, we've placed it onto our rough fencing wood. Take 5 minutes to sand it down, it comes up really nice. And we pop our carbon paper underneath and literally just draw around that, and that will leave you your nice image there. Then take a couple of minutes just to shade in the areas that we want to remove. That way we're not going to go away, come back and start removing this section. Once that's all routed out, we're just going to leave it like that for now. That just gives you a nicer area for the router on. Always leave your cutting out till last. Give yourself a nice surface for your router to move on. Once we've done all our routing bit and we're happy with that, we'll then pop a scroll saw on. We'll remove the centre of the nose and we'll cut it all out. Okay, let's start routing this one out. Nothing too complicated today, and we'll see what we've got. Let's pop on our double flute straight flush trim bit and see how we go. Right, we've got our router bit in the router all set up nicely. Roughly about 3mm, 4mm. It doesn't have to be too precise. You notice there we've done a couple of sample sections, one being deeper than the other. That looks a nice depth for the background. We might go a bit deeper yet, and that looks plenty for the eyes and the mouth. You're better off, pieces like this, is going over it a couple of times, lowering your router bit each time. If you want to go in fairly deep, don't go straight in deep straight away. You're just putting too much strain on your bits and too much strain on the motor of your router. So go over at a shallow depth. For the sake of 2 or 3 minutes, you can go over it again and just keep lowering your bit each time. That way your motor is going to last a lot longer, and so will your bits. So we'll start off with this one here for this back section. It's going to be our deepest section here, and then these are going to be slightly shallower, not a lot. And then remember, we're going to cut out the nose with a Pegas spiral blade on the scroll saw and the surrounding area. Right, it's set up nicely for that one, the deepest one so far, I think. We'll start skimming out this back section, and then we'll take it from there. Let's start routing this one out. Right, there's our first pass. We've basically done the backer and the eyes and the nose at the same depth. So I just want to go a little bit deeper on this back section. That just gives me a bit more wood, should I say, so I can get the sanding drum on the Dremel and round it off. And we're going to sand inside these just to make those eyes pop out. They're just markers, so when we come in with the sanding burr, just got one on here now, I'll just show you quickly. That's just going to give me something to line for when we come to sand it in. If it's not your thing as regards to shaping and whatever, you could have routed these out just as easy with the router bits and pop your black paint in there, give you the same effect. I just want to give it a bit more curve and a bit more school looking. You will notice with those double flute straight bits, they're not as fine a cut as regards to using CNC bits. That's the reason why you use those first, or profile bits or liner bits, is to give you a lot smoother cut, and then you can come in with the other bits, end milling bits, straight flush bits, to remove all the other. So it's a little bit rougher than normally, so a bit of sandpaper, quick skim over that, and those bits come off nice and easy, no problem. So there's our general shape of the bird box. Remember, we're going to cut out the nose completely. So I'll just skim over this back section, just make it a little bit deeper, and then when we come back, we'll be ready for cutting this one out. Right, that's it as regards to the router. I actually went over this back section 3 times, just taking a final skim off with that last bit, and that's gone down a good half an inch maybe. The eyes are literally about 3mm, and I would say about 5mm for the mouth, and that's plenty for what we need on this little project. Now the next section, before we start shaping it and rounding it off and just general tidying it up, is we're literally going to cut it all out on a scroll saw. I like to use Pegas spiral blades. They're ideal because they do cut in any direction. As you can see, the teeth are spiraled the full length of the blade, so they will cut up, down, left, right, no problem. 2 other blades you can more or less get for your scroll saw is a pin blade. They come on your basic saws like so. You get a pin at either side, and you just hook that onto your saw with the blade facing towards you. Wants to be smooth on the way down and rough on the way up. You could use this on this one, no problem. So it's nice and easy. And another blade is a pinless blade. These are your more fancier saws that have clamps at top and bottom. Same again in regards to your teeth facing towards you. These are really delicate. These are ideal if you're doing a really delicate project with a lot of details. You imagine going to a really small hole. Obviously I haven't got one on here. Imagine we're going to cut out that little dot there. You'll be able to feed that in once you've drilled your pilot hole. Whereas if you had the pin blade, you'll find your pins just tend to get in the way. So pinless blades if you're doing delicate detailed work, pin blades if it's just a simple case of cutting this out, which you could use today. But like for me, I like spiral blades, pinless. Unfortunately I have to use these adapter clamps on my old draper saw, and they just hook on the top and bottom as if they were pinned. Obviously we're going to remove this centre nose. That's going to allow entrance for the bird to get into the nesting box. So we'll drill a pilot hole, cut out that middle section there, and then basically cut it all out on this scroll saw. And then we'll come back and we'll start giving a little bit of shape, and then we're looking to see what kind of box we're going to put on the back. Let's cut this out first. Right, that's all cut out with the Pegas Spiral number 5 blade on a scroll saw, and that's basically the shape that we're going for today. You can see we've cut out the entrance for the bird, and then we'll work out what kind of box we're going to put on the back for it to make the nesting, hopefully. Before that, we just want to general tidy it all up. I want to round these edges off slightly. Nice sanding drum on a flexi cable. I cannot recommend a flexi cable enough. They're perfect for these little projects. And some nice drums on eBay or Amazon, and then engraving bits. If you search Dremel engraving bits, you'll get a packet of 30. These are all non-Dremel parts, by the way, and that's just a cheap eBay special, and I've had that for years and I've had no issues with it. So we'll use that. We'll just remove some of these sections here, just to make those eyes pop up a little bit. You could have routed that out just as easy, put the router on and skim that down a little bit, but I'm just going to shape it with a sanding drum and then round these edges off. And then when we come back, we'll look at what kind of paint we're going to need and the kind of box we're going to put on the back. Let's just give it a nice general tidy up first. Right, that's enough sanding down and general shaping up for me. We basically did all this with your little sanding drums. Went through 3 or 4 of those different sizes and basically just used those to give us the general shape that we wanted. So there wasn't really much to show you there. Once you get into it, it's basically the same thing all together. And we've got a little mass there. I've left a little lip on here on purpose. That's just something for the bird to grab hold of. They do recommend that you don't put perches on. This will stop bigger birds landing on, getting in there and dealing with the eggs or the chicks. So no perch at all would be better even still. But that's just enough for our little bird to come in and decide if he wants to become a tenant. We've cleared it all back nicely. You notice I put some little steps in there. I've seen that done on another video, and that will hopefully allow the little chicks to get out and fly away. Now I've looked at different shapes for the back. Went for a standard square, which you could just put on there as such, and then put a piece on the back, a couple of screws, so you can remove it if you want to clear it out and clean it out once the birds have flown the nest, as they say. Some sites say you don't need to do that. Some sites say you need to do. Some sites for the birds say you need ventilation. Some say you need drain. Oh, it can go on forevermore. Personally, the birds in my garden aren't really bothered. As long as they've got somewhere nice and warm and dry, that's all we need. So do a bit of research, but the list does go on and on, shall I say. So we've tried to square. This is all just scrap wood that I've actually got in my shed. I've not cut any of these up. These are all left from previous projects, as you can see. This is just not wide enough at 3 inches. If we look at that sideways on, and we are going for little blue tits. It's a tight call, but for me, I just think we need a little bit more room in there. So the option I'm going to go for is back to the good old fencing wood again. And I'm going to do a triangle effect, so we can actually shape it to more or less a triangle we have there, if you can visualize that. So we'll level up with one piece like that, and we'll use another piece like so, and obviously you've got it. We'll have a piece along the bottom. Now that will be our general shape of the bird box, but for me that's too wide. I'm going to go on 4 inches, and then we'll use another piece to make the back entrance and seal it all in nicely. So it's just too wide. These are at 6 inches, and for a little blue tip, that's going to look like a mansion house by the time it's done. So I'm going to cut these down to 4 inches, and then we'll come back when I've sanded these down, cut them down to 4 inches, and then we'll work out how we're going to put it together. Right, there's all our bits ready to make the little nesting box itself at the back. Now it's not going to be pretty, and I've only used bits of scrap wood that I've had lying around, so it's just a case of making it do. And I know for a fact the birds aren't going to be bothered what it looks like, but you can see from there we've got the general shape going of the triangle. I've just set it all up and cut these at different angles. I'm not the best cutter in the world. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a sore throat today. But here's our general shape. And all I'm going to use on this is screws to hold it all together. And that one will fit nicely in there. So there's our general triangle shape at the back. And that's going to be plenty deep enough. And there will be our backer eventually. That will sit on there. And the final piece there. So like I say, it's not going to be pretty at the back, but it will certainly serve its purpose. Now I'm going to put this all together with screws, and we'll have a couple of screws in the back here, just so it should be, we can unscrew that, move the back, and you can clear this out if you wanted to. The rest of it I've just marked off, got 2 nice screw holes in there to hold that in place, and that'll all fit together, and the same on this side. So no need for glue. Just the screws will be enough to hold that in place. To attach it to the actual skull itself, the screen mask, I'll just show you here before we put it all together. I'm just using these simple triangle, L-shaped, should I say not triangle, L-shaped brackets. And they will fit nicely in there, just one at either side. And I've already got my holes ready to put on, so we'll fasten that there with some little screws. And once we've got it all in place, remember, with this other back piece on, this other bottom piece, we can come in with the screwdriver and fasten that in. And hopefully that will be enough to hold it all in place. It says hopefully. Like I say, it's not going to be pretty, but once it's all painted at the front and we've got it all turned over nicely, it certainly look a lot better. I'll generally just fasten this all together, give it a nice sanding down, just take these sharp edges off, and then when we come back, hopefully we'll be ready for painting the front section. So we've screwed it all together everything seems to be nice and solid. And I've literally just got the sanding drum on a Dremel and just rounded those edges off. Just give it a little bit more shape. And that's it. The box is ready to put back on now. So there's our backer. Remember, this will be the back of the box. And it's just a couple of screws here, which obviously you can remove as the seasons go by, should you want to give it a clear out inside. And there's our little brackets in there. We're going to use those to attach it to the back of the screen mask. You could have quite easily put those on the outer section, but I just didn't want any brackets showing. So it's going to be a simple case of lining that up more or less where we want it. Then I'll screw these brackets in with some little screws, and then we'll pop the back on like so, and then we'll get on to doing the front section with a bit of paint. Right, that's our bird box taking shape. That's all nicely secure, everything's fastened on. Now for hanging purposes, you can drill a hole in the back and put a slit in for a nice big large screw to go in there and hook it on. I will eventually put some brackets at either side, just like we used for inside the mask itself, and maybe one at the bottom there. We'll see how we get on with that, but for now we're just going to paint this one up, just black and white. So painter's touch black for the background here and the eyes and the nose, mouth should I say, and we'll pop on a bit of white just to get the actual skull to stand out a little bit more. I was going to paint it all black. That might happen yet. If not, we'll throw a bit of dye on these side sections just to break it up. Let's paint this one up quickly, and then we're heading towards the finishing line. Right, that's it. This little project is finished. You can see from that, we put on our painter's touch paint, the nice white and the black. And in the end, I went with a wood dye, just a dark teak wood dye, to put the rest and do the box completely. With a nice little slit in the back there. That's plenty to hang up with. You basically would hang it onto your large screw like so, and it slots onto there. And we put a little bracket on there also. That just stops it should it decide to blow about a bit in the wind. And that's no problem with that whatsoever. Just do a little bit of research. Some sites will mention about certain paints you can't use, certain oils you can't use, certain sprays. Some want ventilation in the back, some want drainage in the back, some want a removable back on it, some recommend a certain size of the hole at the front. The list goes on. At the end of the day, we just want a little bird to come along, take over the tenancy of this little property, move in and have some baby chicks. That's all we're interested in. I don't think that bird's going to fly over to this person and say, I'm not too happy with that white paint on there. As long as it can fit in there and make a little nest and it's left alone, that's all we need. So do a little bit of research. No doubt somebody's going to come on and say you shouldn't use the dyes or the sprays or whatever. My birds in the garden aren't prone to fly about and take chunks of wood off. So it's entirely up to you what you use. So painter's touch for me for the paint, and just a little quick wood dye for the wood itself. Once that's been dried, I can't see that being any harm to anything personally. So there we have it. This little project is finished. So it measures in at 10 inches by 8 inches across, and the box itself is roughly 7 inches by 7 inches. We use double flute straight flush bits for the routing side, and then we use a Dremel on a flexi cable with some sanding drums, basically just to give it a bit of shape like so. And I sprayed a little bit of varnish on, not a lot, and we've left the entrance completely natural as we can, so we shouldn't have any issues with the bird in there. Like I say, I don't think it's going to land on top and start taking chunks out of that, but it's entirely up to you. I've certainly had no issues with any of my projects before. So there we have it. This little fun project is finished. So scary movie mask scream into a little bird nesting box. on fencing wood. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to find a space for it.